Hey Subfuries, a new How to Train Your Dragon video will be coming out really soon, but today I'll be taking us through one of the mysteries of Avatar: The Last Airbender, the Air Nomad Genocide. How on earth did the Fire Nation even manage to wipe out all of the air nomads in a single attack? The air temples are near impossible to reach, and as soon as they knew the Fire Nation was coming, they would have escaped. Let's get started. After the death of Avatar Roku, Firelord Sozin knew that the Avatar, the one real threat to his conquest, would be born into the air nomads. And it's because of this that he became determined to eradicate them, to capture the Avatar before he could ever become a threat. Needless to say, he was a little bit less than successful in managing to take down almost every airbender except the one that he wanted, Avatar Aang. You had one job, Sozin, one job. The show isn't all that specific about how the Fire Nation actually killed all of the airbenders. From passing comments from the characters, episodes where we visit the temples, and the comics, we know that Firelord Sozin used Sozin's comet, then known as the Great Comet, to launch a decisive first strike and wipe out all of the air nomads in a single night. The story of the Fire Nation's horrific acts then spread quickly throughout the world. The air nomads were no more. But the fandom was quick to point out a pretty tricky question. How did the Fire Nation even manage to reach the air temples? The air nomads lived in obscure, almost impossible to reach places like mountain peaks and hanging under cliffs, far apart from the world around them. Aang even described them as only accessible with a flying bison. The southern, northern and eastern air temples are all built on the tops of mountains, while the western air temple hangs underneath a cliff. They're all built in purposefully isolated places so that only airbenders could really reach them. Some fans have suggested that the Fire Nation used airships or tundra tanks, which we do see are capable of climbing mountains, or even dragons, but there's a number of issues with these. Now we know that the Fire Nation's technological superiority, as mentioned by Sozin in the Avatar and the Firelord, was crucial to the Fire Nation's victories during the war. But we also see in the first season in the Northern Air Temple that the Mechanist is responsible for giving the Fire Nation some of their most powerful weapons, including the airship. That means like the earliest possible time that the Fire Nation could have even thought of developing airship technology is about the year 89 AG, 9 decades after the Air Nomad Genocide. And that's at the earliest point. We also never see any descriptions or depictions of airships during the original attacks. And War Master Quinn treated the discovery of the airship at the Battle of the Northern Air Temple as a new weapon, as
the gateway to many victories.
Likewise, we also see a wheel of a tundra tank on the wall of the Mechanist's laboratory in the Northern Air Temple, meaning we can be pretty damn sure that the Mechanist also invented that. Without both of these technologies, it seems pretty damn impossible that the Fire Nation could attack each of the temples with large numbers of men. Dragons are a possibility, but it's still pretty unlikely. Rare, revered, difficult to tame, and extremely intelligent, they were not commonly used by the Fire Nation. We only know of 2 people at the time who could ride dragons, Firelord Sozin and Avatar Roku. Being royalty and the Avatar, they held pretty special positions that probably permitted them to ride dragons. But it's unlikely that the Fire Nation military used many, if any of them. Beyond that, in the Southern Air Temple we see that dozens, if not hundreds of Fire Nation soldiers attacked each of the temples, and dragons could carry relatively few people. Now, we do see that there is a narrow path up around the mountain to the Northern Air Temple, but given how slow it would be for them to march single file into the temple, the airbenders would have had plenty of time to get up and escape, so I reckon that's pretty unlikely. So the question remains, how did the Fire Nation get up there quickly with enough men to take out all of the airbenders? They could have used Mishka, the ultimate and most deadly weapon. All hail Mishka! Our biggest clue comes from episode 3 of the first season, the Southern Air Temple, where Aang finds the body of his old teacher, Monk Gyatso, surrounded by dead Fire Nation soldiers. What's interesting is that we can tell by their masked helmets that these are specifically firebenders, not just mere soldiers with swords and shields. Katara and Sokka also only find firebender helmets and not any foot soldier outfits. It seems very clear that only firebenders were sent in for the attack. And this is important because the assault on the temples took place during Sozin's comet, which powers up firebenders with the energy of 100 suns. It's an event that doesn't last much longer than an hour, but the show demonstrates that the most powerful firebenders are able to harness the comet's energy to produce sustained flight. Sozin planned this attack some 20 years before he actually started the war. So why would Firelord Sozin, a genius strategist, wait 20 years for the attack and only send in firebenders when he had so many other men at his disposal? The reason? Firelord Sozin had to wait for the comet if his firebenders were to reach each of the air temples. Only the Fire Nation's most powerful firebenders, harnessing the energy of Sozin's comet, could fly up to each of the 4 air temples to attack in a decisive, quick, and deadly ambush. All of this had to be done in the time that Sozin's comet passed, which, as said before, probably isn't much more than an hour. This theory also fits with a number of other details. The southern, northern, and western air temples actually look pretty intact, despite being attacked all those years ago. Most of their wear is pretty much just from age. Traditional Fire Nation artillery like catapults and ballistas would have destroyed the buildings and the towers and not just killed airbenders. Sending in firebenders was far more efficient. The Eastern Air Temple is the only temple that we actually see has a lot of wear and tear from artillery fire, like holes in walls, crumbling towers and buildings. And it also happens to be the largest air temple with 3 peaks. My theory is that the air nomads may have built up the Eastern Air Temple because it was more accessible for building machinery. We can see that it's right next to the Earth Kingdom, which has that sort of technology, and it's for the same reason that I think that the Fire Nation may have been able to get their artillery a lot closer or higher up to the temples, and then been able to do a lot more damage. Finally, firebenders could have easily dropped down into the Western Air Temple just like Zuko when they attacked. Sozin choosing not to primarily use artillery in the attacks was probably a strategic decision on his part. He knew that being quiet and quick was essential to catching the air nomads at unawares, and crucial to their ambush being a success. Beyond this, each of the elements are strongest during a certain season. Firebending is of course strongest during the summer, while airbending is strongest during the autumn because of the strong winds. Sozin's comet arrives in the peak of the summer, which also happens to be one of the less windy seasons. Ambushed by quick and quiet firebenders powered by Sozin's comet during a season that the air nomads are relatively weak, the airbenders were no match for the Fire Nation. But this still doesn't explain a number of things. Was it really possible that the Fire Nation wiped out every last airbender, especially when the Elder Council had anticipated that some darkness was about to befall them? Why are there so few skeletons in the southern, eastern, and western air temples? Who was to say that all of the airbenders were even in the temples? And given we know that an airbender strategy is typically to evade and avoid, wouldn't it have been pretty easy for them to just fly away on their flying bison? All of these questions, I'm afraid, will have to wait for another video. But that's all from me, Subfuries. If you enjoyed this video, then let me know of any questions you have about Avatar: The Last Airbender in the comments below. There will be another How to Train Your Dragon video coming out pretty damn soon, but in the meantime, follow me on Twitter, Wattpad, Facebook, read my books, or email me at the links in the description below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the future.